That we are going to do our last album of the night, which is the B-52s. Josh, not only am I going to allow you to run the numbers, but I'm also going to allow you to pick the opening song. Not allow you. I'm going to ask you to pick the opening. So
Yes.
how about that? Yeah, you don't need to ask permission.
The B-52s-WILD Planet from 1980. It is the 47th best album of 1980, the 360th album of the 80s itself as a decade, the 2,313th album of all time, and it is their third best album, according to Best Ever Albums, out of 15, with their self-titled
Behind
being their
Cosmic
first,
Thing,
and Cosmic Thing being 2, and this one being 3.
Gotcha.
Cosmic Thing's later.
89,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So
Yep.
I remember. Yep. So Josh, what are you picking?
Yes, my favorite track is My Own Private Idaho.
Good
Private
choice.
Idaho.
You're living in your own private Idaho. You're living in your own private Idaho.
Keep up the path, around the gate. Watch out for signs that say hit it that way. Don't let the glory in your eyes blind you to the up of the prize. And I'll wait for you at the bottom of the bottomless blue, blue, blue,
Okay. And, well, I was high on the B-52's opening debut album, and I'm high on this album as well. Maybe slightly less than the opening album, but still strong debut. They're really growing on me as a band as well. That's kind of been the theme of this week's episode for me, since we're covering all these artists that we've covered before. But they still maintain their sense of humor and energy in this album. Their lyrics are hilarious at times. Their songs are hilarious at times, especially their opening track, Party Out of Bounds, which is a cautionary tale about throwing a bad party.
Yes, it is.
And then going on to, other things like having a literal devil in your car, in Devil in My Car, and Quiche Lorraine, which is a hilarious song about a dog. And they're just
Which you would not expect from for a song called Quiche Lorraine.
no, but I really enjoyed the stories that they tell and their delivery vocally. I feel like Kay Pearson and Cindy Wilson are real standouts for me in the band. I love their vocals and their singing and how it often overlaps with each other and complements each other. They both have very distinct voices, so they don't ever sound like one another, or you can always tell who's who.
Well, and so does Fred Schneider. So
Yes.
between all three of them, yeah.
Yes, and
distinctive is the key word.
Definitely. That is the third kind of component to their trifecta vocals, is that they're all playing off of each other, and it works really well. And, all the songs that from their big hits exemplify that. And this album is no exception. I feel like they're still, they still have their really good bass and guitar lines throughout this album. They often start with kind of a guitar lick or guitar groove or bass groove to start a song, and then it goes right into the vocals. The drums are also strong on here. On some, Private Idaho is kind of, I think, an example of all of this stuff that I'm talking about. The chorus is like bonkers good. They kind of have this keyboard part that leads into the chorus.
Well, that's the Twilight Zone music.
It's almost like it, but yeah, it is that. And then it comes in with their vocals overlapping on the chorus, and then the drums kick in as well. And yeah, it's kind of not more of the same, but more of like, if you really liked the debut album, you're really going to like this album. And they're just probably, a little stronger in or confident in their musical ability and I think that comes through. And they have a good. They know who they are, and they know what type of music they're trying to make, and I get that. I think that comes through on their album. They are like no other band, really, in some aspects. So yeah, another big enjoyable album for me.
Yeah, I think the most fascinating thing about the B-52s, besides the fact that they're another one of these bands that had like two careers, you know, they had the beginning one, and then as we had talked about in the last episode, tragically, Ricky Wilson, the guy who's doing the guitar parts here that are almost impossible to not associate with these two albums, right? Like his groove guitar, he passes away in the mid-'80s, right? And then you know, they released Cosmic Thing, this other huge album, you know, without that. Just imagine excising, like, kind of the heart of the band musically, you know, and then being able to sort of reinvent yourself. And some of that is because, like you mentioned, the three unique vocalists is its own. I think the other thing is it's just fascinating to think, like, how does a band have this vibe in the late 70s? And like, where does it come from that this sort of, like, you know, sort of retro, but like trash retro almost.
Yes.
Kind of like what Andy Warhol, you know, kind of like the idea of like the, or
John
like
Waters.
John Waters is a good, exactly. That's what I was going for. John Waters is the greatest, like trash retro a little bit. Obviously, you know, I think all but one member of the band are members of the LGBTQ community. So there's and you can kind of get that vibe at times because they wink and nod a lot at different times with stuff. But
yeah, they are campy in a certain way and very self-aware.
You kind of just wonder, like, how did all these people find each other and have this unique
from Georgia,
this unique sort of worldview? I think, you know, it's almost like something that it seems like one person should have, right? But instead, there's this group of people, and just I really appreciate the fact that, like, at times they come from these batshit crazy angles where you're just like, where did you get the idea, like, of this song and the topic of, you know, whether it's, you know, on the first album, like, you know, Rock Lobster, like, where's that and then this, you know, whether it be 53 miles west of Venus, or, you know, just, and like Josh mentioned, like, Keeslerian's about a dog, like Strobe Light is this very interesting song about sex, but it's like sex at both a gross way, but also like a very it's like at some points it's like gross, and at other points it's like sort of like, oh, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know how to describe it, kind of. It's like, I want to, like, you know, gnaw your face off under the strobe light, but also because, you know, I want some romance, you know? It's just, I love the odd angles they come from, and I love you guys always use, and I laugh at you guys sometimes, you guys use the term danceability all the time, but this is like the guitar parts that Ricky Wilson's play. He's like in the pocket or in a groove, you know, of sound that always is established. It almost is like they lay down his guitar parts like you lay down the beat in a hip-hop track, and then once you get that, it's like, all right, the MCs are kind of like, you know, the women and Fred Schneider, right? You know, whether it be Cindy Wilson or Kate Pearson or Fred Schneider, like, which MC is going to go on this, or is it going to be like a collaborative piece? And then, you know, then they spit the lyrics, so to speak. But in this case, it's sort of, you know, spoken word mixed with like high singing, mixed with almost like girl group level harmonies at different times, and they kind of always keep you on your toes a little bit, which I greatly appreciate. I found songs like Give Me Back My Man to be really funny as well, because it's like a traditional, like, give me back my man, but also there's all kinds of hidden subtexts in it as well, which cracks, which is, you know, a little bit of that LGBT, you know, Q, you know, vibe sort of hidden in there. But yeah, I really enjoyed this stuff. I think, to me, these are it's almost like a double album to some degree, and you could tell the songs are written at the same time because there's enough overlap that you know, I did get curious and say, were some of these songs written during the first album, and a lot were, and they toured kind of initially off of tracks from the debut and some of the stuff from this, which makes a lot of sense because they do fit nicely. I'll be a little controversial. I actually might like this album a little bit more than I like the first one, and I like the first one quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
I really enjoyed the guitar and the energy on this. There was just it was this fascinating mix of the freewheeling spirit of the B-52s, but there was a real tightness to this album as well.
Yeah.
As that sometimes in the first album it was just all freewheeling with a little bit less tightness. This one seemed like a band that was a little bit more well rehearsed, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But the good news is they're well rehearsed. Still, the springs are coming off all over, which is kind of the best thing when you can, be well rehearsed, but also go, all right, now we're gonna like open it up a little bit. And so it's the best of both worlds. But yeah, I really liked this album, and I really appreciate the B-52s because, like Josh said, there, it's oversaid to say like no one's like this, but like, can you think of anybody? Like we said, John Waters is really the only paradigm I can think of, and he's a filmmaker. Like in terms of bands,
I can't even think of any bands that have tried to like rip off their sound.
Like D-Light, Groove is in the Heart, is the only thing I can think of. Like that's the only band I can think of that kind of had that vibe, like a retro. So maybe I'd say that, like D-Light, the Groove is in the Heart folks. That's about it though.
Yeah, there's just a real, I think the word that comes to mind for them is vibrancy. There's such like an energy and like fun sense of just life that comes through in their music, and the fact that they are write about these like wacky things. Like, I mean, back on the first album, they talked about like a volcano being basically a metaphor for sex, and like that's, I don't know. And Quiche Lorraine is just a hilarious name for a dog. So I can't get over that.
Well, it's also, I should mention that this is new wave, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, and so like we've done some new wave, but and maybe Devo is another group that kind of is in that same vein in terms of how they take odd angles from different spots, and they're another new wave band. And yeah, there's that new wave energy that we're starting to see a little bit with them and Blondie and Devo. And, new wave's kind of one of those hard music terms because, like, what is new wave? Well, it's a lot of things. But this album sounds like what I imagine like a new wave album is, like pushing interesting boundaries, topic-wise, kind of all over the place, off kilter a little bit. And so like I would classify this as a new wave album too. I thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, still, Devo and B-52s may be new wave, but I think Devo does kind of have a different feeling than this band does. They're more cerebral in some ways, and maybe I think you called them mathematic or math rock at times.
Well, it's them a little bit. I call anything math rock that feels like it's constructed. You know what I mean? Like, I guess what you're calling cerebral is what I call math rock sometimes. Yeah.
There's just a different attitude, I think, between those two bands, even though they're both new wave.
I think for me, there's a little bit more. Not a ton, right? But there's more concentric circle than you might be here for me personally in terms of
I think that's true.
Yeah,
and especially I think as we discover more new wave bands or listen to ones that we've heard, we'll probably see more of those similarities.
But yeah, for those that are, this is an easy one to describe. It's as hard as that Raincoats album was to describe sonically. This one's easy, like groovy guitars that are what I would call in the pocket a little bit with the drums. That's the pocket, right? That, rhythmic guitar with the drums. And then the other part of the sound is the vocals. Like just it serves its own instruments plural because of how they deliver stuff, from songstress to lower female voices to harmonies, as I mentioned before, to spoken word to exclamations from all of them. It creates its own sonic structure, and it fits very well in terms of what topic they're trying to get across, whether it go from the absurd to, I would never say they're serious, at least that we've heard yet. And I am pretty familiar with Cosmic Thing, and They don't get much more serious there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend this one. I like this quite a bit.